Welcome to our small group Bible study, Unstuck, Out of Your Cave and Into Your Call. Today's lesson will be on breaking out of isolation. It's one of the 7 sticking points that take us to the next season. A few years ago, I had the opportunity of going to Mozambique, Africa, beautiful country with beautiful people, but in a lot of poverty, where life expectancy was 45 years old. We traveled to an orphanage led by the Sisters of Calcutta. And we went to this orphanage and they showed us around the 400 children that they were taking care of, 200 children that they were feeding outside. And I'll never forget, they took us into a room where there was men that were dying of malaria and AIDS, and they just helped them die with dignity. Then she took us into another room and there were mothers there, women that were on their deathbed, very skinny, struggling for their life. And then the most compelling room this nun took us into was a room full of cribs. This room was packed wall to wall with cribs and little babies in these cribs, up to 1 year old. When I walked in, I noticed immediately this little round-faced, curly head baby. Her name was Muyena. I asked the nun, can I pick her up and hold her? And she looked at me a little bit suspicious, like I'm not sure that's a good idea, but she said, go ahead. And so I picked up Muyena, and she had this incredible response. I'd never met this baby before, but she wrapped her legs around my chest, put her arms around my neck, and held me like if she had known me all of her life. She peeked up and looked at me occasionally and just held me tight, and I walked around, patted her on the back, spoke to her a little bit, and then when it was time to go, I tried to put her back into her crib. Oh, then it broke loose. She wailed and cried and screamed, and the nun looked at me and shrugged her shoulders. And I'll never forget the words of this Indian nun as she looked at me and she said, everybody wants to be held by somebody. I'll never forget those words. From a little baby in Africa to CEOs in downtown Chicago, to college students and universities, we all want to belong. We all feel like we need community of some kind. Elijah was stuck. And one of the first symptoms of his stuckness was that he traveled to the cave of isolation. In fact, if you read the story of Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 19, you'll realize that he got rid of his assistant and he traveled to the desert of Damascus. I've been to that desert. It's a dry, arid, lifeless desert. He traveled to isolation because when he really needed people, he isolated most from people. I've discovered over the years that many of us, when we most need relationship, is when we most isolate from the people around us. God created you for relationship, to live in community, not only with Himself, but with other people. It is unhealthy for our spirit, for our emotion, for our relationships when we isolate and try to handle all of our struggles alone. In this lesson, you're going to discover God has a plan as you get unstuck to break you out of isolation and into community. So as you go through this lesson, I want you to ask yourself this question: do I have significant community in my life? Are there people that I share my soul with? Am I living in isolation? Is there some step that I need to take to break out of isolation and into community? Enjoy your lesson.